This is The Hook with Sarah Larson. I'm your host, Sarah Larson, and I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, Allison Cullen with You Do Woo. Allison, thank you so much for being here. And I'd like you to go ahead and tell everybody what it is that you do.
I am so honored to be on the show. We have known each other for a while now, and I am so excited about your new podcast. So honored to be one of your first several guests. And yeah, so what I do, it's hilarious. So, backstory, I used to work in the music industry. I almost went to law school to become an entertainment lawyer because I've always been a musician. I always loved music, and my father's an attorney. So I was like, "Oh, I'll put the two together, like my love for music and law school." And I remember when I got accepted to Pepperdine, my dad was like, "Are you sure? Like 100% sure that you want to go?" I was like, "Oh." And then I got offered a job in the music industry in Austin. So he was like, "Just take the job. You can always go to law school later." And I'm thankful for that. Anyways, the reason I say this is because I'm sure my family and friends are like, "What is Allison doing now? This is so woo woo." Hence the name, You Do Woo. I'm a business coach, but I coach through the lens of something called human design. So human design it's almost like a personality type test, like the Enneagram mixed with maybe astrology, and different somatic elements. So the whole purpose of it is to get you out of your freaking head and into your body with decision making and utilizing your energy on an everyday basis. We spend so much of our waking hours in our freaking head, and it is such an energetic leak. And the true magic and wisdom doesn't come actually from our brain most of the time. It usually comes from deeper down within the body. So I do business coaching, I do business strategy, setting up offer suites and exposure strategy and all of that kind of stuff, combined with a little bit of the woo through the lens of human design.
That's awesome. Great description. I love it. And if anybody listened to my podcast a few weeks ago that was released with Natalie Barnett, you would have heard us mention Allison as our mentor. And Allison is the person that I learned about human design from in the beginning. So when I first was introduced to it, and I have just been a big consumer of information about it.
I mean, you could learn about it for decades, honestly. There's so much information. And so it's very much tied to genetics. So the more that we learn about our DNA, the more that we even learn about human design, which is really cool because it's all based in our genetic blueprint and DNA.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we will dig back into that later on in the conversation, but I'm going to regress us here a little bit. Can you tell us where you grew up and what was your childhood like?
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. I have actually lived in Texas all of my life, which is real funny starting down the woo-woo path, being in the middle of the Bible Belt, but that's another story. I had a really good childhood. I had a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was an attorney. I think he was a banker when I was really little. And then I remember when I was in kindergarten, he went to law school, and he spent a couple, 3 years, I guess. We didn't see much of him those few years. And then he became a partner in a firm and still does that to this day. Had a really great upbringing. When I was little, I had some OCD issues. I think I had matches my human design actually, but I had so much energy and not really an outlet for it. I'm not talking about physical energy where I needed to go like run. It was almost like mental energy, if that makes sense, and just like this inner drive and no real outlet for it. And so from first to fifth grade, I suffered a lot with OCD. I went to therapist. I was like that kid who turned off and on the lights and had to like walk a certain number of times and touch things, certain equal amounts of times, like that kind of thing. Nobody noticed it except for my family. So it's not like my friends knew it or anything. when I got to junior high, you were able to pick an elective. And so you could do choir, orchestra, band, or athletics. And I chose band and I started playing the flute. And my OCD went away. It just like was cured because I needed an outlet for all of that energy. And I was really good at it, obsessed with it in junior high and high school, even played through college. I wanted to be actually perform in a symphony, but then I got accepted to the business school, Macomb School of Business at University of Texas at Austin, which is like I think the best public business school in the country, or it was at that time. It's still a good business school. So I got accepted, and my dad didn't push me. He very much was like, you can do whatever you want. But it was between UT Austin and then some other like music based schools. And I chose UT Austin because I was like, well, I need to be able to make money. People who play in the symphony don't make that much money. And there's only a certain number of spots and whatever. And there's many spots for people in finance. So I went that route. I did the whole like sorority thing and that kind of stuff, was trying to be like not the band nerd anymore, but fast forward, I'm 39 and I'm still a nerd. So you try to not be what you truly are, and it's funny how it just stays around.
Does. I would say that I was a nerd in school too. Very big into math and
Yeah.
and English. And now I still like just that learning, all of
Yes.
that nerdiness. I think it's
Forever
all there.
student. Yeah.
Forever student. Yeah. I love learning. And it's funny because I've had this conversation with several people about, well, what do you do for fun? And, honestly, half the time my answer is I read, I listen,
Right.
I'm soaking up information. That's fun to me. So
I
I
know I'm part of a mastermind where it's I would say there's like 10 women in there and they're all very successful. I think I'm like the baby, the one that has had her business the least and isn't doing like 50K months yet and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. And it's interesting because the discussion came up of like, what do you do for fun? Like, what do you do for a hobby? And everybody's like, well, work is my fun. But I'm like, okay, I don't want to be a workaholic. So I'm picking my flute back up, and I do read, and I love swimming, and I love being in nature and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm like, ugh, I need to like really make sure I'm finding a lot of pleasure outside of work. So lucky to have so much pleasure with work, but I need to
right.
do a little bit better of a job of making sure I find pleasure outside of work too.
Yes, I'm working on that myself because I could work literally every hour of the day.
I know.
It's, well, that's part of our human design too. So.
Yes, it is.
When you went to college and you decided to study business instead of law, did you feel like that at that point was an identity shift for you to, like you had in mind that you were going to do law and then you shifted to business? What did that feel like?
So it was actually backwards. So
Oh,
I didn't explain that very well time wise. So in high school was when I was like, I want to be a professional flutist in a symphony, right?
got it.
So, but then I got into business school, went to business school, was studying finance and marketing. And then near the end of business school, I became friends with one of my best friends now in Austin, who we were going and seeing live music together a lot. And I was like, ooh, I really want to work in the music industry. I don't want to work in finance. I want to work in the music industry. So it was like junior year of college, I think, when I was like, okay, how do I make this happen? I can go to law school, and I loved learning. I was like, oh, I'm almost done with college. I want to keep going, like I'm just now like getting into the groove of this. So that was when I decided to take the LSAT and apply to law school. And then it was senior year that it was like time to make the decision of where I was going to go, putting down housing deposits, all of that kind of stuff. Me and my parents flew out to LA and visited Pepperdine, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm sure my dad was like, oh my God, this is the most expensive law school in the world. Like,
Right.
what's going on? But I was like, but it's by a beach. This is going to be great. Anyways, and so it was a couple weeks after that I got a call from an old mentor who was like, hey, there's a position open at a CPA firm for a business management position. He was like, I know you want to go to law school. I know you want to be an entertainment lawyer, but like getting in and learning how the music industry works first and then going to law school would actually be the smarter thing, like making connections and networking and stuff. And I was like, well, I'll interview for it. Interviewed for it, got the job right away, had to then make that decision, which it's interesting, human design wise, you're taught to use your body to make a decision rather than your brain. And that was like very much a gut, like, yes, I want to do this. I mean, they gave me a good salary, which right out of school, you're like, whoa, I get this much money a year. Like, it's amazing. But it didn't matter the numbers. I would have took that job for 20K a year, you know? I think that was that big pivot of like that gut feeling of like, okay, I can always go back and go to law school. My dad had a 90-year-old woman in his law school class, you know? So I had to follow my gut. And it's so cool because everything then ended up lining up just life-wise perfectly.
Yeah.
And I don't even work in the music industry more. But if I would have like gone and spent so much time and money in law school, I think that I would not have then taken this path that's so fulfilling to me now and truly my life's purpose.
Right. Why is that? Do you think that you would have just felt like so much in your head, in the mind decision making, that you wouldn't have considered this avenue?
When you go to law school, they teach you how to use your mind for everything, right?
Yeah.
So I think I would have gotten even more conditioned into that. Whereas working in the music industry, you work with a lot of creatives and you see all kinds of different things. I started seeing how money was so easy to manifest for people because people would just get like royalty checks that were $150,000, bam. I started seeing the ins and outs of money. I started seeing people make decisions like with their emotions rather than logic and how it actually worked out for them, which is not taught in our society. I think also if I would have gone to law school, I would have been like $500,000 in student loan debt at least. And I think once you commit to that, that's really hard to be like, okay, well, I want to change my mind later on. I commend anybody who does, but I don't know that I would have.
Yeah, pivoting out of law school probably would be challenging, or not even out of law school, but once you get into that industry, that would probably be pretty challenging to get out.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us how you got into human design?
Yeah. Well,
tell us about that transition.
Yeah. So I worked in the music industry from age 21 till just a couple of years ago. I was what they call a business manager. Basically, it's the fancy word for accountant and like executive admin assistant person for lots of different musicians and bands and music related businesses like booking agencies and stuff. And a few years in, I also started 2 other businesses. I started a direct sales business just for fun. I was really good at it. And I didn't like selling the products, but I loved the business coaching aspect of it. I've always been great with business management and business coaching. So I did that. And then I also met my now husband, and we started a photo booth business together because he's a photographer. And we were getting into like the wedding venue market and everything, and we renovated this old Shasta camper and put a photo booth in it. And it was like the cutest thing ever. We still have it and we're going to go take it camping. It does not operate as a photo booth anymore. If we would have kept doing that, we would not have gotten married. It was just very stressful, but it taught me a lot, like with building a business from the ground up. So I had all 3 of those things going on: music industry, my direct sales business, and then the photo booth business. We actually quit the photo booth business before COVID. Thank goodness, because that would have been a whole, like anybody in the wedding industry knows that was like a crazy thing for them. So that was already closed and done. We had gotten married and had a baby. I had my daughter in 2019. I already knew about human design at this time. I knew what I was. I was like researching it and stuff. No intent on studying it or having it be my career. But my daughter was born in September 2019. And when I gave birth, I mean, a few hours after I gave birth to her, I looked up her chart because I was like, what is she? She's probably a generator like me. She is a reflector, which is less than 1% of the population. And I was like, oh my God, I have to learn about this. Like when you have a kid that's less than 1% of the human population, you're like, okay, I got to learn all about this and how I can best help her grow up and with this way. Because reflectors are very, very sensitive. They're very empathic. All of their energy centers are open. So they're very susceptible to other people's energy. So that was the reason I started studying it. Then fast forward 6 months, March 2020 happened. My music industry clients just had they quit working. They couldn't pay me anymore because they didn't have any shows. And I was furloughed. I had to get on unemployment. And I think in Texas, the max we could do unemployment was for 6 months at that time. I tried to do the PPP loan. I got a very small amount for that. My direct sales business actually boomed because I was applying human design to it, even though in my gut, I was like, I'm going to be easing out of this soon. It wasn't my thing, but it did really well. So between unemployment and my direct sales business, I was able to float through 2020 pretty well and take my extra time that I didn't have to work and get certified in human design. So the universe pushed me out with COVID.
Yeah.
And it sucked in a lot of ways. COVID was terrible in so many ways, but I'm going to get emotional because I was talking to my husband about this the other night and we were like, that was so hard. That was so hard raising your first kid during that time. It was so hard having isolation, all the anxiety about what was happening and all of that. But if that wouldn't have happened, I would still be working in the music industry and not happy.
Yeah. It's incredible the things that we have to go through to find what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here I am. So I started my podcast in July 2020, started doing human design readings then, and it's been 2.5 years.
That's amazing to me. I know that it's been recent for you, but it just still feels like when I hear you speak and hear your podcast and things that you're doing, it just blows my mind that you've only been doing it for a couple of years.
Oh, well, thank you. It's, I got certified. I took a couple different courses because I wanted to have a broad sense of it, not just one person's take on it. But it's weird because I feel like it's something that when I do sit to do a reading or to coach somebody, it's something's coming that's not me. It's coming from God, and just these downloads come and I'm like, well, that came out of my mouth. There we go. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I didn't read this anywhere. It just came. So I know that sounds weird, but that's how I know that it was very much meant to be my calling. It's not something I had to try really hard with for the first time in my life. Well, it was the same with flute. I picked up the flute and, I wasn't amazing at it at first. You got to practice a little bit, but I was better than other people in 6th grade. And it was like, whoa, did I play this in a past life? It just came very easily to me. And I was reading music easily. And it's almost like nothing else has ever happened in my life like that. Motherhood wasn't like that. It did not come easy to me. Nothing else in my life has been like that except for flute and human design. It's very weird.
I know in what little study that I have done that there are gifts that we have that are just ours and that other people just can't. We don't even realize a lot of the stuff that I've started to discover. I just think, oh, I didn't realize that was something that only I did.
That came easy to you that doesn't for other people. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally is a thing.
Yeah. Something came up when you were talking earlier and I wanted to ask you about it. Oh, it was, where did you learn? You mentioned that when you had your daughter, you'd already learned about human design, but you weren't really studying it. Where did you learn about it?
Yes. So it was, I forget whose podcast it was on. It was an older podcast from 2017 or something. I think that who I ended up studying from, Jenna Zoe, who I
Mhm.
love and highly recommend. I also love Erin Claire Jones and the Day Luna Girls. I've actually bought, before I got certified, I bought a blueprint from Erin Claire Jones and loved it. And then I also got a reading from the Day Luna Girls and loved them too. So I love all three of them. And there's many more, but those are, I feel like, the main three who have been around for a long time. But I think it was Jenna Zoe that was on somebody's podcast where I heard about it. And I didn't even pay attention to any of the other types. I just went and looked up mine. I was like, I'm a generator. If this makes sense. My 6-2 made sense. My sacral authority made sense. Everything was like, that is on, I'm tracking. Yes. And I started putting it into my life, which then made me start realizing that the music industry and direct sales weren't for me, but I didn't know what was for me. I didn't think it was human design at all, but I was like, sort of looking for like, well, what is that? What lights me up? What, what's that thing? Um, and it wasn't until I had my daughter that I was like, okay, I have to get certified in this.
Yeah. So you started digging in. That's a huge, all right. So as you likely know, I like to look at life through this lens of disruption. So
Yeah.
pandemic, I know, has been a huge disruption for many, many people. How did you feel, even having made that decision, but knowing that you no longer had those other income portals and
Mhm.
changing completely around to business coaching through human design? How did that feel? What did you think about what challenges, I guess,
Oh God.
came up?
um, what's weird is that I have always been a risk taker so long as my gut says yes, my whole life. So I don't really think, and this is something that my husband would say is a fault probably. I don't think through the logical downfalls. A lot of times I'm like, well, if my inner guidance system is telling me to go this way, then I will be taken care of. Like I truly will. So financially, that was a scary financial thing. But at that time, everybody was scared financially. So I feel like I wasn't really doing something crazy. And I didn't really have a choice. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Everybody was trying to figure out how to pivot.
Yeah.
So
So I didn't have a choice a little bit, which I think was a blessing because I didn't have to really talk my husband into anything. I was like, well, I'm SOL. Let me use the 6 months of unemployment to like get something up and running. Well, it took more than 6 months to really get up and running and
yeah,
stable. And I was able to during that time. It's only been very recently that I've been consistently making like 5-figure months, which is what I needed to be able to. Like we own 2 houses. We have large overhead. We have a family, like all that kind of stuff. I can't just make $2,000 a month and be okay.
yeah,
I could if we sold everything and moved and lived in an RV, I'd be fine with that. But anyways, the way our life is right now, it was like, okay, you need to be making 10 grand or more a month to make this make sense. And it's only recently, this past 6 months, that that has happened. I did keep my direct sales income portal open. It wasn't as big as it had been, but it was something. We also do some real estate stuff. So that was coming in, not so much during COVID because we do Airbnb, but a little bit was
gotcha.
coming in once things opened back up and everything. And then I really worked on manifesting magic money. So a couple of times during the past 2.5 years, I've manifested decent amounts to like hold me over.
Yeah,
So I didn't have to put pressure on my business so much.
which is great. I think that's where I kind of entered your world, was through
Mm-hmm.
your Feminine Art of Getting Rich course,
Yes.
which is, it's really interesting. I won't say that by any stretch I've manifested huge amounts of money, but
Yeah.
what it did help me recognize is that I have some real hangups when it comes to money.
Everybody does.
Yes, and it's related to absolutely everything in my life. So it's been a whirlwind of a year since that, but it really opened my eyes up to how you could manifest things,
Mm-hmm.
and just opened my eyes to a whole other world that I didn't even acknowledge or know existed.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really open to it, which is interesting. I think my husband thinks I'm a bit wacky.
That's okay.
He, isn't quite there. It's interesting, and I've seen some things. In fact, one of the things that I had sent you a message about earlier this week was that I had tried your kind of contract with God
Mm-hmm.
/ task list for
Mm-hmm.
the universe kind of thing. I have a lot of balls in the air right now
Yeah.
because I have two businesses, and an opportunity has come up that I'm, kind of interested in and feels like the right way to go.
Yeah.
But I have all of this stuff going on. And so I was trying to figure out income and shuffling and how do I manage all these things if they all are happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I threw out some tasks for the universe and had some movement. I won't say that, oh, this was solved or this was solved. This has only been in the last week, but
Yeah.
it was really interesting to me. And that I saw that even going back to, again, that course that I took with you on the feminine art of getting rich, where I was seeing that I would put something out and go, okay, if I'm supposed to do this, then
Mm-hmm.
show me a sign or let something happen, and things would happen. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been really interesting. I'm certainly not a master at it by any stretch, but it's been an interesting journey.
Well, it sometimes takes some time for things to start showing up in 3D reality. And one thing I'll also say is I've had a lot of people take that course and the money magnet course. The money magnet is a new, I'll message you about this outside of this episode recording, but the money magnet is a 7-day boot camp. So it's
Mhm.
something like if somebody's not ready for the full like 6 module deep dive, then the money magnet boot camp can be a good thing for them. But I will say, it's weird because I had originally started this business just doing human design readings. So for about 6 months, it was just human design readings. But then people just wanted to go deeper and they were like, well, do you do coaching? Da, da, da. And I had never intended on doing that, but I did start doing it. And money is always something that comes up. And I just want to tell everybody, and I'd like to talk about this openly,
Yeah.
even people who have multi-million-dollar bank accounts have issues with money. So this is something, especially as women, that we need to talk about. There is like generational trauma around money from the past, since the Industrial Revolution started, since we
Sure.
started having like, and I'm for some parts of capitalism, like, money is a good thing. And we've let it go a little too far on the masculine side, and it's caused a lot of trauma for people. And
Yeah.
everybody has it. I coach people who make millions of dollars a year have issues with money. So
Yeah.
whether you make $100 a month or $500,000 a month, we're humans. Money is a weird, energetic, fake thing that causes us problems in some ways. And you get to rewrite that. I even have this now that I'm making stable income. I've gotten to a point, I noticed myself getting to a point where like money comes in and it's like, okay, well, yeah. And then it was like, I noticed myself being just like not grateful for it. And I
Uh,
had to stop myself and say, no, money is like your partner. If you just ignore them and don't talk to them and you're like, whatever, that's going to start showing. They're going to get resentful. They're not going to want to hang out with you. They're not going to want to be sweet to you. And you have to sort of be that way with money too. So this is just something recently that I've gone through that I'm working with my coach on, of being like, literally every little cent that comes through, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for coming my way. Come hang out with me. I'm going to make you babies. Like, let's make more of you. Like, you know what I mean? And once I get to 100K months, I'm going to have different work to do. Same
yeah.
with you. Like, you're just always going to be working on it.
Right. Right. Oh, that makes me tired.
I know. It's exhausting.
I know. Just thinking about it. You talk about these downloads that you've had from human design, and I know you just launched a course, cheat codes
Mhm.
that were downloaded to you. Tell me more about that. How did that come about? How are you feeling about it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you
So,
look like you feel good, but
oh my gosh. So, cheat codes is something that came about in January 2023. There's 11 codes. They were all things that I learned over 2022. And I decided to combine it with like a human design deep dive course. It's still like I'm making it in real time right now. I
Yeah.
love making courses that way because it's just fun for me. And I get to sort of co-create it with the students that are in there too and make sure it's full and complete and has everything they need. But people have been asking me for a while, like either if I can't afford to do a full reading with you, or I really want to like learn everything there is to learn about human design. I don't need to be certified, but I want to learn it for my coaching business or for
Yeah.
my podcast or for my clients or whatever. So I combined basically what is a quote unquote like everything you would learn in a certification course to apply to your own chart, your family's charts, your clients, and all of that. So you know just as much as I know, plus the 11 codes that are downloaded. I could have given them like created two separate courses,
Mhm.
but I was told to just put them all together so they would all be there because the codes don't really have to do with human design. All of the human design stuff is in there and I'm adding more as well. But then codes are separate, but they're things that I learned in practicing human design that are
Yeah.
applicable to everybody, no matter what your human design type is. And it's just freaking magical. I wish that I would have had this course 10 years ago. Like I truly do. It would make life so much easier. And I could have fast forwarded a lot of the growth, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. But that's like what, when you take a course, when you do coaching, you're paying for not having to take time to find these things out on your own. You could not like get any coaching or take any courses and just take the next decade and figure it all out on your own. And why not figure it all out in 3 months and just fast forward that?
Yeah.
Because money is not our most precious asset. Time is our most precious asset.
Absolutely. Have you studied at all, or are you familiar with Karen Curry Parker's
Mhm.
quantum human design?
Mhm.
So I've dug into that a little bit.
Yeah.
And as a manifesting generator, that type has been renamed time bender under
Yes.
the quantum human design. And
Yep.
I think, wow, I really want to be able to bend the time. So what do I need to be doing to do that? Because I
Yeah.
do feel like time just is, there's just a shortage, a scarcity, which is not good. That's not a good
Yeah.
mindset to have.
Well, so as a Gen, you're also meant to show us that you don't have to do things in a linear way and you can have those quantum leaps. So, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen right away, but you might have where it's like you have this first quarter and then in April or May, you just like freaking explode.
Yeah.
Your podcast like explodes. Like that's what a Manny Gen is meant to do. And a lot of Manny Gens that I work with are that way. My coach is that way, and she's a Manny Gen. That is what Manny Gens are meant to do, is show us this non-linear way and that you can have quantum leaps and that you can bend time and collapse time and all that kind of stuff. One thing I would say, if you're feeling like a scarcity around time, is just when you sit down to like do your creative work, I would just sit down and do some breathing first and like get quiet and just say, okay, I have an hour to sit down and do these things. I would love for you, like the universe, to make this feel like it's 8 hours instead of an hour.
Ooh,
And just really be intentional
that
with that
idea.
every time you sit down. It'll feel very expansive.
Oh, I love that idea. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah,
Okay.
play around with that.
Yeah. What else would you like to share?
Yeah. So I was just, before we got on this podcast recording, I have a few other Zooms today, but I like to always keep like at least 30 minutes to an hour between each just to like decompress, get water, get food, all that kind of stuff. And also like sit down and journal about like how that went and then how you want the next one to go. So I was doing that before I got on with you. And I've been having this weird like feeling of limbo. And I was writing in my journal about this. We're recording this today on the last day of the month. And my old brain works in monthly things, monthly numbers. And it's like, okay, reach all your monthly goals, da 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 da. And I haven't quite reached my goals for the month yet. The generator, Allison, would be like, okay, let's make a plan. I'm excited about it. It's not like
Yeah.
frantic, like forcing things, but it's like wanting to make a plan to like reach that and be excited, you know? And today my body was like, no, I'm not tired. I have a ton of energy. I feel amazing. But it was like, wait, don't do anything. It's like my body is telling me to keep all of March very open. And I already have a few things, like I have some podcast recordings scheduled. I have like one private coaching person, and I definitely have room for another private coaching client. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just like post about that to say, hey, if somebody wants the end of March, holler at me. And it was like, no, don't. And I don't know why that is. And it's the weirdest thing, but I'm going to honor it and I'm going to listen to it because I know that I've had weird intuitions in the past that I haven't listened to. And then I realize later, oh, you should have listened to that. So that's like a
Yeah.
really interesting thing. It's a feeling of limbo almost. And I haven't felt this since I was pregnant with my daughter. She was born in late September. And I remember I was ready for her to come in August. I was just like, done. She came at 42 weeks. It was just like, oh my God. So I was so ready in August. And it's that, well, I'm sure when you have a second kid, it's not that you're like, oh my God, that went by so fast. But those 9 months felt so long to me. And I was so ready for her to be here. And that last month just felt like limbo. Like you're just waiting. You're just waiting around and you're ready for that time. So I feel that limbo energy right now, but I don't know why, which is the weirdest thing. And you're
Wow.
the first person like publicly that I've told about this. So we'll see when this episode comes out if I know any updates about why that
Yeah.
was.
What comes to mind is that idea of, okay, last time you felt this, you gave birth.
Right?
What might you be getting ready to give birth to?
I do not know. We're going in a couple of weeks. It's spring break, and we live in Dallas, Texas right now, and we're working on moving down to the hill country. We want to be in nature more and near rivers and lakes and all that. And so we're going to look at houses in a
Hmm.
couple of weeks. So I'm wondering if I don't need to like make it all happen right now. Like
Right.
there's not any time pressure, but I'm wondering if maybe that's the situation where it's like, okay, we're going to need to really quickly get all of our ducks in a row and make a move. And so if I fill up my calendar too much, it's not going to be conducive to that happening like smoothly. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm available for all positive, wonderful things to happen as far as giving birth to something.
To
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah. So I'll keep you
Well, I can't
updated.
wait to hear what happens. Well, would you like to share where people can find you on the internet?
Yes. Okay. So I am on Instagram at you do woo. Please send me a DM and tell me that you found me through Sarah. And I will also give you a couple of links that you can give to your listeners.
Yeah.
I have some free cheat sheets so they can see how to look up their chart and then get a free cheat sheet from me that sort of walks you through on your own every little aspect of it. I have a podcast called You Do Woo. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, not always on the weekends, but usually Monday through Friday. So come follow me and say hi.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. Just love the conversation. Love
This
always
was
hearing what you have going on.
this was so fun. And you like, I mean, you found your jam because like you're a podcast host. That is
Yeah.
like your superpower.
Thank you. It
Yeah.
feels like it. This is the thing. It's interesting because I started listening to The Gap and the Gain,
Yes. So
and
good.
I love it. But one of the things that has really resonated with me is this idea of doing something just because you want to and
Yes.
not rationalizing it to anyone else.
Mhm.
And this podcast really has become that for me. I just absolutely enjoy the heck out of it.
Yes.
I want to do it. If I could do it, nothing else.
I know. I'm the
Really
same
amazing.
way. I'm the same way. I told my husband, I was like, if I won the lottery, I would keep doing my podcast and my mastermind.
Yeah.
Like that's what I would do. And I'd freaking love it. So how blessed are we that that's the situation, because not everybody gets to do something on an everyday basis that they freaking love, that they would do if it even not for money, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm loving it.
You're awesome.
Thank you so much.
Well,
For-
congratulations. I'm obsessed with the show, and I know that it's going to be a big hit.
Thank you.